Let's get back to the Connor Happer Show on 1620 The Zone.
All right, a couple items here in which Scott Frost comes up. So,
Scofro?
We're just going to slam it all into one segment here.
Okay.
We got Scott Frost conversation here on the Connor Happer Show on 1620 The Zone and on 1620thezone.com. But there is a question first from Headley.
Hi, Headley.
Important question, Connor. How many pounds of cheese could you consume for $1 million?
Oh.
What do you mean? What kind of question is that? Like, I could just give me one slice of cheese. Thanks. I'll take the $1 million.
Yeah, you got to go low on this.
What do you mean, what kind? How many pounds of cheese?
2 feels like too many.
Yeah, like if they say, all right, you have to eat 4 pounds of cheese and you could get $1 million, could you do that? Yeah, it's $1 million. I think I could get to 4 pounds of cheese. I go to the store and I say I want first time I got the sliced cheese actually from behind the counter, I was like, can I have a half pound? And they were like, you really want a half pound of cheese? How many people live in your house? And I'm like, well, it's just me, basically. Me and my wife are eating this cheese. Mm-hmm. And they're like, you don't need a half pound. It's like a quarter pound of cheese. That sounds a little bit better.
What's a cheese weigh?
It's like 10 slices, like a quarter pound of cheese.
Okay. That feels like enough.
Headley says if I said 10 pounds, looking for the ceiling of the amount of cheese that you could eat. If you could eat 10, could you eat 10 pounds of cheese for $1 million? If they said at the end of this rainbow, you get $1 million. I don't think that I can physically eat 10 pounds of cheese. Certainly not in one sitting, but even over a day. I mean, I'm coming off a weekend in which my stomach is, you were
eating good.
I imbibed this weekend. So I don't want to think about eating 10 pounds of cheese right now.
Jays were on the road.
Oh, yeah. Connor Happer was living it up.
Mm-hmm.
Living it up around town. My stomach and my wallet suffered greatly this weekend. All right, so, by the way, I've just received a text from a cheese enjoyer. I get 3/4 pounds of cheese every time. 3/4 of a pound of cheese every time.
For the week?
I don't know how often that is,
okay.
But every time this person goes to the store, this person gets 0.75 pounds of cheese.
Okay.
So this person eats cheese at least twice, maybe 3 times the rate at which I eat cheese.
I'm guessing there's more people in that person's house.
There are. Yours. I think there are. Anyway, it's from cheese to Scott Frost. He comes up twice this weekend, Josh. There was, this is every 2 weeks, by the way, sharp cheddar and Gouda.
Fancy.
Yeah. CBS Sports ranked the college football's 15 worst coaching hires the past decade. Who do you think showed up on this list?
Oh, I'm going to guess Scott Frost.
Not just Scott Frost, but also Mike Riley.
Oh, yeah. That one wasn't great
Nebraska,
either.
That's right, is the owner of 2 of the worst hires of the last decade. 2 in 1 decade. You can afford 1. You can't really have 2.
Does that kind of make it better? Like, okay, it explains the huge chasm Nebraska's trying to step out of.
Okay, there's a lot of arms to that question, Josh. There's a lot of arms to what you just said.
Okay.
I would say that Scott Frost was not a bad hire.
No. I would agree.
Obviously, they're playing the results here. Mm-hmm. It did not go well.
Right.
It did not go well.
Maybe one of the 15 worst tenures.
Maybe. I assume that's kind of what they're doing. So they had this. They had Chris Ash at Rutgers, who won 8 games in 4 years.
Whew.
That's bad. I used to call him Chris Ass.
Okay. That makes sense.
Nick Rolovich at Washington State is on here, but he got fired because he didn't agree with the COVID policies.
Oh,
yeah,
that guy. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he got fired after only 1 season. Then it's Frost, 16-31. Kevin Sumlin at Arizona went 9-20 over 3 years.
All right.
Mel Tucker Mel Tucker, not a bad hire. Didn't end well. Not a bad hire.
Yeah.
Didn't end well. Not a bad hire.
Uh-huh.
Brian Harsin, probably a bad hire.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a bad hire. Obviously didn't go well and probably not very good at Auburn. Herm Edwards, probably not great hiring practices.
Yeah.
Once again. Jimmy Lake.
Jimmy Lake
at Washington.
Oh.
He was, I'll give him a little break because Chris Peterson that was sort of abrupt. Like, I don't know that we saw that one coming. And then it was like, hey, you hand it off to Jimmy Lake and he'll be able to keep it going. He did not. And then it was COVID. And then everything else got messed up.
You remember COVID, don't you?
I do remember COVID.
America.
I do remember. Mike Riley, 19-19 in 3 seasons at Nebraska.
19-19.
That's not bad. Jeff Collins, 10-28 at Georgia Tech. That is Matt Rule adjacent.
Oh.
Jeff Collins.
Whoa.
Jeremy Pruitt, Tennessee. This one was pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
That one was pretty bad. Willie Taggart, also bad.
Yeah.
At Florida State. Ryan Walters at Purdue. Just got done going 5-19 over 2 years. Bad.
Yeah.
And that seems like we're still in it right now, and Barry Odom hasn't coached a game yet, but borderline irreparable. Like, I don't know how Purdue gets out of the current. I mean, they were already in a hole because they were Purdue, and then that hire went so magnificently poorly, and yeah, I don't know how they get out of that hole.
You give Drew Brees a do-nothing GM job, and you're back on your feet.
Now, here's a bad hire. This is number 1 for me.
Oh.
Les Miles at Kansas.
Okay.
Now, that's a bad hire, folks. That's a bad hire. I will never forget watching that documentary that they put together.
What time did the girls play?
What was going on at that job at that time was unbelievably bad. The incompetency levels knew no bounds for Les Miles at Kansas from 2019 and 2020. And Chad Morris takes the cake for going 4-18 at Arkansas in 2 years in 2018 and 2019. So I think there's a mix of what's going on here. There's some bad hires. There's some bad results. I will maintain that Scott Frost was not a bad hire. It worked out very badly.
Match made in heaven, right? Like, obvious choice.
So let me ask you this. Here's what it says about Frost, by the way. And we're going to get into another Frost thing in a second. What it says, this is by Will Backus, I believe, of CBS Sports.
Hi, Will.
At the time, Frost was a significant hire for Nebraska. He was fresh off a 13-0 season after downing Gus Malzahn's Auburn in the Peach Bowl. And as we'll see later on this list, a lot of Nebraska's early struggles in Frost's tenure weren't necessarily his fault. It's not Scott Frost's fault.
It's not Giancarlo's fault.
But the high point of Frost's tenure was a 5-7 2019 campaign. I would actually disagree. I actually think it was the 3-9 2021 campaign. But anyway, he never made a bowl game and won a total of, what are you doing? Oh my God, Pat McAfee is doing the show from the CHI Health Center right now?
Yeah, Raw is in Omaha tonight, which means Pat McAfee is in Omaha tonight.
Well, I should get him to stop by. He loves talking about sports.
He loves talking.
Anyway, he never made a bowl game and won a total of 7 games in his final 3 years. If Nebraska already had one foot in the grave before Frost got there, he ensured the once proud Huskers were 6 feet under by the time he left. I disagree with that. I don't think that's true. And not to put this all on Riley because it wasn't, but there was. I don't think Nebraska was that much, if at all, worse off when Frost got fired than they were when he got hired. In fact, I think they were. In fact, I think they were actually kind of better off. Now, I'm mostly talking about from a roster standpoint. And keep in mind that stuff can change overnight with the transfer portal and NIL and all those things now. But I don't think that's a particularly fair representation of if Mike Riley dug the grave, then Scott Frost buried it, or whatever. Like, I don't think that's right. I don't think that is an accurate representation of how that went.
I'm thinking. I'm sorry. That's bad radio.
No, I don't. Go ahead, ponder it.
Yeah, I think Riley's thing, I guess, was he couldn't convince the good players to come play for him, right? And
I think both coaches had a lot of other stuff going on and had these weird agendas, and they had weird bosses. And
now that one's true.
I just don't know. I don't know. When I think about why Nebraska football has been the way it has been over the last 20 years, a lot of it has been due to not the coaches. It's weird because we just, Rule just talks about, hey, look, man, we just got to get our part right. We got to get the football part right. But we've seen it. In order for the football part to get right, you have to, there has to be a linear, agreement kind of from top to bottom on what you are and what you're going to be as a program. And you have to know, like, you have to answer those questions. So I think part of those coaches' failures was that they weren't able to succinctly answer those questions. What are we? What are we going to be? What do we want to be? And I mean, in Frost's case, I think he changed it a little bit throughout his time, which did not serve him well. We're going to talk about that as it pertains to the Wisconsin head coach a little bit later on in the show too. So once again, I don't know. I will always go to bat for it wasn't the mistake that Nebraska made wasn't hiring Scott Frost. It wasn't, in my opinion.
No.
Could have gone better. And then there is the responsibility of the coach himself of what happened when he was here. And that brings us to an article on ESPN from Andrea Adelson, who sat down with Scott Frost. Scott Frost walks into the UCF football building and into his office, the one he used the last time he had this job 8 years ago. The shades are drawn just like they used to be. There are drawings from his 3 kids tacked to the walls.
Whoa, we're not talking about his family.
No, we are now. There are still trophies sitting on a shelf. He still parks in the same spot before he walks into that building and sits at the same desk. The only thing that has changed is the desk is positioned in a different part of the room. But the man doing all the same things at UCF is a different Scott Frost than the one who left following the undefeated 2017 season to take the head coaching job at Nebraska. Well, why? It's a question. Why is he different? Frost said, quote, "I know I'm a wiser person and a smarter football coach. When you're young, you think you have it all figured out. I don't think you really get better as a person unless you go through some really good things and really bad things. I just know that I'm where I'm supposed to be." There's plenty more. Since his return, Frost has had to adjust to changes to college football, but said, "I love coming into work every day. We've got the right kids who love football." Such a great Scott Frost line. "We're working them hard. They want to be pushed. They want to be challenged. We get to practice with palm trees and sunshine, and we're playing big-time football. But it's also just not the constant stress of a meat grinder of some other places."
Like, I can say these kids are puking here and it won't be a thing.
Yes,
because nobody covers the University of Central Florida.
He was always adamant during his time here, like, hey, the kids want to be coached. We're working them hard.
Yeah.
They want to be coached.
They want me to stuff them in a locker.
So here reads the story. The meat grinder of some other places. Might he mean a place such as Nebraska?
There's no place like it.
You can think what you want, Frost said. One thing I told myself, I'm never going to talk about that. It just doesn't feel good to talk about. I'll get asked 100 questions. This is about UCF. I just don't have anything to say. I'll continue. There's a couple more quotes in here, but the context is important. Frost said that He has no regrets about leaving UCF, even though he didn't get the results he had hoped for at his alma mater. When Nebraska decided to part ways with Mike Riley in 2017, Frost seemed the best, most obvious candidate to replace him. He had been the starting quarterback on the 97 team, the last Nebraska team to win a national title. He now had the coaching resume to match. Frost had done the unthinkable at UCF, taking a program that was winless the season before he arrived to undefeated in the talk of college football just 2 years later. But he could not ignore the pull of Nebraska and the opportunities that came along with power conference football. Quote, "I was so happy here," Frost said, here beating at UCF. "We went undefeated and we didn't get a chance to win a championship, at least on the field. You're always striving to reach higher goals. I had always told myself I wasn't going to leave here unless there was a place that you could legitimately go and win a national championship. It was a tough decision because I didn't want to leave regardless of which place it was." Indeed, Frost maintains he was always happy at UCF, but he also knew returning to Nebraska would make others happy too. Quote, "I think I kind of knew that wasn't best for me. It was what some other people wanted me to do to some degree." There's more, Josh, but that's a good stopping point.
Okay.
What do you think about that line?
Other people wanted me to be the Nebraska head coach, so I became the Nebraska head coach.
There is no doubt that he felt that that pull. And when we talk about this now, and by the way, it is the summer, so it's a good time to talk about it. Look at old things with the proper amount of context and hindsight now. I always think, like, in hindsight, people always ask, like, how could we have known? How could we have known that it was going to work out the way it did? And there is one thing that I could say in that category. There is one thing. It's not something I would have noticed at the time or thought about at the time. Maybe some others did. Everything pointed to Frost, and I think Nebraska's sole mission was to go out and get him by any means necessary. And they brought out the big guns, right? The meeting in Philadelphia and the cheese. It wasn't just the cheesesteaks. And then having Davison come and Osborne, make his plea as well. He really did have to be convinced. He really did have to be convinced.
Okay.
It was not that he certainly didn't like, hey, this is no questions asked. This is an open shut deal. I'm going. Everybody thought that about him, but clearly he looks back at it now and is like, hey, no, I liked it here and I didn't want to leave. But he definitely had to be convinced. And so now I think the disappointing part is he looks back at it now and says, well, I did that, I did that for other people and it wasn't, you have the option to not. You have the you have the option to not take the job. So I do think it lacks a little bit of responsibility as something that he is, he doesn't talk about this a lot, but he always has sort of lacked that accountability.
Well,
piece.
Even when he says, I'm never going to talk about this.
Yeah.
That kind of tells you, well, why would you not talk about it? Is it because you revere Nebraska so much? Or because if you do talk about it, we're going to learn some of the things we suspect and joke about here on the radio.
I just wish that he would take some responsibility. Because ultimately,
I was not ready.
Once he took over, yes, sure. But maybe, that's another thing where he could look at it and say, oh, well, that's a thing that doesn't affect, that's something that I have no control over. But once you get here and once you do take the job, it is yours. Mm-hmm. And then you are in charge of how it works and what happens. And that never gets talked about. It's always the circumstances in which, it's the same crap as if we would have played the Akron game, we would have been good.
Yep.
Like how it started obviously got off to a bad start, but you are still responsible
You're the one on the stick, man.
You got to find a way to figure it out, regardless of the circumstances. And if you don't like the circumstances, then fix them, because this is what it is. And I know he did. Like when he came back, he loves Nebraska. He loved Nebraska, right? So I don't know. You just never felt like he worked that part of it enough. Mm-hmm. And now thinking about it later, it leaves people a little hollow when he doesn't take any responsibility or accountability for it. Or it is like, well, yeah, other people wanted me to do it, so I guess I did it. Whatever. I'm going to be better here now because I'm better now.
He, at the very least, never learned how to cope with the meat grinder.
Yeah. I think I would agree. I think everybody would agree that he also didn't handle it very well either. But that's what I'm looking for.
Right.
That's where to really know when Frost is like, all right, I've made peace with this. It's like, yeah, I could have done some things better. That's it. We haven't heard that. We haven't heard that.
I know people listening probably think, well, they want their pound of flesh from Scott Frost. I really don't. For his own personal growth, I really just want him to go, you know what?
Exactly.
That was kind of a disaster.
Yeah. He should probably take some accountability. Mm-hmm. He should probably take some responsibility. That's all. So there's another thing where Scott Frost will come up a little bit later on in the show. But yeah, I wanted to dive into that right off the bat, because those were two things where it came up. I'd happily talk about that all summer long. I'm sure it'll do us a lot of good to just recount the Scott Frost era the entire time.
We can go game by game over the summer.
Well, it could be fun.
Yeah.
Sounds like an idea for the Omaha Baseball Village.
Try to figure out the low point.
Yeah. I'm never going to talk about it. Never going to talk about it. Got an email from Adam.
Hi, Adam.
Exactly. If Frost would simply say something along the lines of, I probably wasn't ready for the NU job, didn't appreciate everything that went into it, and if I could do it over, I would do things differently. If he would just say that, this would go away, and no one would want to talk. No one would care about talking about it anymore. Yeah.
Now I want the Omaha World Herald to send a guy to Orlando every week,
but nobody would ever talk to him
about it.
Yeah, it's weird, but he could make it unweird pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're back with Mike Schaefer coming up next on 1620 The Zone.